Bishop Gaiters and all our viewers, I apologize for that brief delay. Remarkable technological disruption here this morning. Bishop Gaiters, how are you? Can you hear me? Bishop? I just had the bishop a second ago. Bishop, can you hear me? We were just speaking a second ago. Bishop? It's really strange what's happening here today. Every manner of technological failure. I do not have audio from the bishop. We were just speaking a second ago. Bishop, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, you're back. Very bizarre. You've got me, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, Bishop, it's been an interesting morning here. How are you, sir?
I am doing great. I think the deep state is kind of nervous today.
It's always difficult for me to go there in terms of disruptions here in the apartment. Certainly it's possible, but I don't know, Bishop. I'll tell you, it's a bizarre set of circumstances. You know, you were with us last week speaking about the Boule, this secret society which is made up of 10% of the community in Black America, and that their role is to control the other 90%. Our viewers on Crowdsource The Truth were absolutely fascinated by the show, and so many people are constantly asking me, when will the bishop return? And so we're delighted to have you back, Bishop, and you've prepared yet another presentation for us today. You're going to delve into the history of eugenics in America. What have you got for us today, Bishop?
Well, Jason, thank you so much for this great opportunity. And the topic for our listeners today is entitled Deep State Financial and Political Eugenics. Again, Deep State Financial and Political Eugenics. So just to rehash what was said on last week for the listeners who were not on the show to hear us last week, back in 1883, there was a British biologist by the name of Dr. Francis Galton in London, England. And he was the first person in the Western Hemisphere to coin the term eugenics, which means good stock, all right? That word stock is interconnected to the New York Stock Exchange and the New York Cotton Exchange. And I'm going to come to that later on here in the broadcast. So Dr. Francis Galton was the first person in the Western Hemisphere to coin the term eugenics, which means good stock. And he got his funding through the Great Britain arm of the Rothschild dynasty, all right? And also in 1883, by funneling that money through the Prisker and Prisker law firm out of Kyiv in the Ukraine. So just kind of bring people up to speed from last week. The Prisker family exists today in the city of Chicago, Illinois. They're one of the most richest families in America and around the world. And they also own the Hyatt Hotel Corporation chain throughout the United States and throughout the world. So this Prisker and Prisker law firm, through Jacob and his son later on, Nicholas, supplied the money from the Rothschild banking dynasty in Great Britain to help Dr. Galton to start the eugenics movement here in the Western Hemisphere. But I found out something also in preparing for you on last night, Jason, that the grandmother of Dr. Francis Galton was a woman by the name of Lucy Barclay, connected to the Barclay banking dynasty in London, England. I find that to be interesting.
Yeah.
So when we talk about the deep state financial and political eugenics, and what I'm teaching here today is not the psychology of victimhood. I'm not doing it because I'm a Black Republican and I'm a Black conservative. My job here as a researcher and a historian is to hold the cover and expose the left-wing Democratic Party, who is solely responsible for the transatlantic slave trade. So we talk about the New York Stock Exchange in 1792. Notice the term New York Stock Exchange in 1792, where 24 stockbrokers met on Buttonwood Avenue on Wall Street, to create, with Rothschild and J.P. Morgan money, the New York Stock Exchange. Now, the stock exchange, they wasn't trading stock of IBM and Coca-Cola and Pepsi-Cola or Frito-Lay. The stock that they were trading, Jason, was indigenous African slaves. I want us to point that out. That's very important. So in 1792, the origination of the New York Stock Exchange started on May 17th, 1792. Now, interesting, as we move forward here, 78 years later, in 1870, the creation of the New York Cotton Exchange takes place. Now, we talked about this slave owner by the name of August Belmont Schurenberg. Now, August Belmont Schurenberg, we know that the horse race, Jason, is named after him, all right? And according to Dr. Tony Browder, in the series Hidden Colors, and all of your listeners, they should get that series on DVD. It's parts 1 through 4, Hidden Colors. So Dr. Browder says that August Schurenberg used to burn his slaves at the stake. That's why it's called the Belmont Stakes today. That's interesting.
But so, sick is what it is.
And it's sick, absolutely. So the New York Cotton Exchange, was built in 1851, but was incorporated in 1870 at 1 Hanover Square in Wall Street. Now, notice that term, square. Now, all of you who know the history of the Masonic Order, notice the term 1 Hanover Square, the square in the compass. So August Belmont Schurenberg was born in Hanover, Germany, in the Hesse district, which is Hanover, Germany. But he is put in place by the Rothschilds to oversee the New York Cotton Exchange at 1 Hanover Square, the compass in the square. Now, the New York Board of Trade today is owned by the New York Stock Exchange, and the New York Board of Trade, along with the New York Cotton Exchange. And back in 1882, this is interesting, Jason, the Coffee, Sugar, and Cocoa Exchange was absorbed and became a part of the New York Stock Exchange. The stock is the indigenous slave now, not Coca-Cola or IBM.
Well, sorry, Bishop, let me ask you this. Yeah. So you're saying that the stock exchange was exclusively for the trade of slaves initially?
In the beginning, yes.
Wow. I don't know if most people know that. I had no idea that was the case.
No, and the thing is, this is very interesting. That can also be seen in the video series Hidden Colors, where Dr. Tony Browder talks about, and not just there, but also it's very fascinating when we examine the history or the historicity of the slave trade in Wall Street. So
Bishop, I know you have a ton of stuff to share with us today, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but you're raising some names that I just want to draw people's attention to. Now, this Browder person, this is the first time I've heard you speak about them, but it immediately draws to mind Bill Browder, who is an American expatriate in Russia, who was mentioned by Vladimir Putin at the summit in Helsinki with Donald Trump. Bill Browder has renounced his U.S. citizenship to avoid paying taxes on hundreds of millions of dollars that he has earned by working with his associates including Mikhail Khodorkovsky, to essentially rape the people of the former Soviet Union, buying up the stock certificates that were handed out to people during perestroika, when the gas companies and the electric companies and the phone companies were given out as stock certificates to the people. Browder and Khodorkovsky bought all these stock certificates, made hundreds of millions of dollars buying these utilities and these resources for pennies on the dollar, and Putin now is saying he's a tax evasion criminal. So I wonder if there's any familial connection between the Browder you're talking about and the Bill Browder who Devin Nunes seems to be inappropriately defending and is all over Fox News. You also spoke about Barclay. When I looked up Lucy Barclay, I see this very young woman who is obviously not the grandmother of the person that you're talking about, but it's interesting that she's Lucy Charles Barclay. That reminded me of basketball. That reminded me of the Barclay Center in Brooklyn. And that reminded me that I think Jay-Z owns part of that Barclay Center. And I'm going to ask the most obvious question. Jay-Z's got to be a boule.
He is absolutely a boule. That is, my friend, I'm so glad that you brought up his name, Jay-Z or Gay-Z. He is not just a 33rd degree Mason, he is a high-ranking boule, including his wife, Beyonce. And there is a church, a plethora of churches across the southern portion of the United States, specifically in Atlanta, called the Church of Beyonce, or the Church of Bey, B-E-Y. So in Babylonian mysticism, the goddess Bey, capital B-E-Y, is the goddess of seduction. So I'm glad that you brought up Jay-Z and Beyonce. But there could be a connection between Dr. Tony Browder and the person that you made mention. Now, concerning Lucy Barclay, to our listeners, you can go to galton.org, and just type in ancestry of Francis Galton. Again, ancestry of Francis Galton. And when you go down to the second paragraph, it says that Francis Galton was related to the Quaker stock in many lines, an inheritance which was reinforced by the Quaker tendency to intermarry. His grandmother, Lucy Barclay, was a Barclay by at least 3 lines. And it goes on to say here that the Barclays may well have been more important to Francis Galton's ancestry. So I find that to be interesting, that not only did the Great Britain Rothschild arm of the Rothschilds supported Western eugenics through Dr. Francis Galton, but also the Barclay banking dynasty, which goes back, Jason, all the way back to 1690. But when we talk about the deep state financial and political eugenics, part 1, the New York Stock Exchange was bought by a company by the name of the Intercontinental Exchange, or ICE, where the CEO is Jeffrey C. Sprecher, capital S-P-R-E-C-H-E-R, and he is a member of the Atlanta B'nai B'rith of the Anti-Defamation League. Now, the ADL do great work. I have no problem with them. But later on, I'm going to reveal, just in a snippet to your audience, the history of the ADL, all right? Now, like I said last week, Jason, 99.9% of the Jewish people are beautiful people. I'm dealing with the 1% who are Zionists. And I'm not talking about Jews. Anyone can be a Zionist, whether you are black or white or yellow or brown, whatever. So the New York Stock Exchange, including Wall Street, going back to the 1600s, Wall Street gets its name because the slaves who embarked on a ship from all over Africa during the 16 and 1700s were brought to the East River and were lined up all the way from Hudson River to the East River. That's why Wall Street is called Wall Street, because not only did the slaves build the wall of the financial capital of the world, but these same slaves were lined up men, women, babies to be sold to who? To some of the most powerful banking industries in this country today.
Wow.
So when you look at Lehman Brothers, when you look at Goldman Sachs, now to our listeners, Goldman Sachs and Lehman Brothers, they controlled 85% of the cotton trade. That's critical. Again, they controlled 85% of the cotton trade. So when you look at companies like AIG, do you know, Jason, the insurance company Aetna, okay? And a lot of your listeners should know concerning this insurance company. Now, this insurance company helped underwrite the life insurance of the product who was the slaves of these indigenous slave owners who were the proxy leaders of Lehman Brothers, Goldman Sachs, and the Aetna company. So the Aetna insurance company underwrote the slaves, and what they did, Jason, that they underwrote and created a insurance policy for the slaves called Dead Peasants Insurance.
Wow.
Dead Peasants Insurance. Now, you remember back in 2010, there was a major lawsuit against the Walmart Corporation in 2010 that the Walmart Corporation was getting millions and millions of dollars because many of their employees began to die. And the families of these dead employees were not receiving, Jason, the death benefits that was due to them. But those monies, millions of dollars, was kicked back to the Walmart Corporation. Mm-hmm. So the Aetna insurance company was involved in the transatlantic slave trade, which lasted from 1400 to 1865 through the Emancipation Proclamation.
That's unbelievable, Bishop.
465 years.
Unbelievable. Putting it in those terms and speaking about it in 2019 is important because I think a lot of people have been caused to forget that detail. 400 plus years. I'd also point out, ironically, right now on Aetna.com, a black family showing 3 generations is pictured. So it's a stark contrast to what you're explaining to us.
That is amazing. You know, the Aetna insurance company, my friend, you are a great researcher. The Aetna insurance company, they sold insurance to slave owners.
And then the slave owners would kill the slaves and collect the insurance. Wow.
And there's multiple lawsuits against Aetna, Wachovia Bank, all right, J.P. Morgan and Chase. Do you know, Jason, that when J.P. Morgan died on the 31st of March in 1913, 9 months before the creation of the Federal Reserve, J.P. Morgan only owned 17% of his bank. Guess who owned the other 83%? The Rothschild dynasty. So J.P. Morgan, in all of his political and financial power, was only a midget, a front for the Rothschild dynasty. So both the New York Stock Exchange and the New York Cotton Exchange was ran by a Rothschild agent, August Belmont Schurenberg, all right, who at one time wanted Washington, D.C. to buy the land in the nation of Cuba. That's interesting. So as we delve deeper into the deep state financial and political eugenics, and I have to say this too before we get further into the topic, all of your listeners, if you get an opportunity, look up slaves that are buried beneath the ground of Wall Street. I'm not kidding. There are over 20,000 slaves, okay, that came through the transatlantic slave trade that are buried beneath the ground of Wall Street. And I believe that there is a plaque in Wall Street that was put up a few years ago to honor the slaves, and to honor their courage. But 20,000 slaves are buried, Jason, beneath the streets of Wall Street.
That's shocking information, Bishop. And I'll tell you that I was at the courthouse, which is kind of near Wall Street. It's downtown there on Pearl Street. And there is a sigil there marking, I'll take a photograph of it next time I'm there. I meant to do it, but I was in a rush. There's a sigil marking the death of Africans right there. And
Wow.
It's bizarre and creepy. I'll take a picture and we'll look at it on our next show.
That is creepy. My God. And you look on, and to all of your listeners, Jason, go to reunionblackfamily.com, reunionblackfamily.com, or globalafrican.com, and just type in, there are thousands of Africans buried under Wall Street. We are talking about the financial capital of the world, that Wall Street in the American industrial complex was built on the backs of slaves. Now, mind you, I'm a Black conservative. I'm not teaching victimhood, okay? But what I'm doing is to strip down to the core the history or the origin of the Democratic Party. And the history in the origin of the Democratic Party was created by Thomas Jefferson in 1792, along with James Madison. Thomas Jefferson, a left-wing liberal, created the Democratic Party, and we're talking about the deep state financial and political eugenics. Thomas Jefferson was a pedophile.
What?
I'm exposing the root. Go to phillytrib.com, trib.com, capital PHILLYTRIB.com, or just type in President Thomas Jefferson, a pedophile rapist.
Whoa.
Sally Hemings was 14 years old when Thomas Jefferson, the father and the progenitor, the creator of the Democratic Party, raped Sally Hemings, a young slave woman.
Ooh.
And had multiple children. Now, people are going to say, well, Bishop, that was the norm back then. And, that was, no. If it's pedophile 300 years ago, it's pedophilia now.
Yeah.
And what I'm doing is exposing the root and the core of the Democratic Party, who was responsible, Jason, for the transatlantic slave trade. That from 1400 to 1865, more than 100 million slaves, Africans, were enslaved. Who was involved in that? August Belmont Schoenberg. Who was involved in that? J.P. Morgan, the house of J.P. Morgan, Lehman Brothers, Goldman Sachs, AIG, the Aetna Insurance Company underwrote, like we talked about a few minutes ago, the insurance policy entitled Dead Peasants Insurance, that if a slave would die, the family of that slave would not get the money, the slave master. And also, before we go on quickly here, is that it was Roger Sherman in the House of Representatives who coined the term the Three-Fifths Compromise. I want all of us to hear us today, the Three-Fifths Compromise. And there's a phrase in the Black community, Jason, that a Black person is 3/5 of a man. Well, Roger Sherman is a Rothschild agent. Now, what does the Three-Fifths Compromise mean in relation to the deep state financial and political eugenics? Every slave during slavery in the South, Jason, was considered property, cattle, chattel, was considered a 3/5 of a vote. So let's say Benjamin P. Judah or August Belmont had 100 slaves. And each slave represents a 3/5 of a vote. 3/5 times 100 equals 60 votes. Plus the slave master, that's 61 votes. So the slave didn't have a voice in who he or she voted. It's demonic. That came from left-wing Democrats, all right, who wanted to sustain the slave trade. So
Bishop,
Wall Street, as we wrap
sorry
this
to
up.
interrupt you again, Bishop, but let me just take you back a second, because one of the most shocking things you've shared with us this morning, and it's right here in the Philadelphia Tribune, how do we know this is an accurate account that Thomas Jefferson is a pedophile rapist? I mean, Thomas Jefferson is one of the founding fathers. He's on the $10 bill, right? I mean, this is shocking information.
Well, you also go back to Dr. Tony Browder in the Hidden Colors, parts 1 through 4. You also go through the Oxford Dictionary of global history when it comes to slavery. And it is no small secret that some of the founding fathers on the left who were slave owners, and most of them, as we know, were 33rd degree Masons, right? They were slave owners. And Thomas Jefferson was a pedophile. Now, people are going to email me and send me text messages that says, Bishop, that has nothing to do with the deep state financial and political eugenics. It does, because pedophilia is a part of the system of eugenics that the left is perpetuating. And you and I talked about this group called NAMBLA back in June. You remember the Man-Boy Club, all right? In many families, not just here in the United States, the Rockefellers, even George Soros is supporting an organization, I believe, out of California called Little Kids, which Adam Schiff is a part of.
Whoa.
Little Kids, and Adam Schiff is a part of that. And so, Jason, you can look up, go to Google Images and type in Adam Schiff photo with a child from years ago. And it would show Adam Schiff is a part of the Little Kids, Little, L-I-D-D-L-E, Kids, K-I-D-Z. Now, the president exposes multiple times on Twitter. And what is the goal of the Little Kids before we get deeper into this financial and political eugenics? The goal, Jason, of the Little Kids Foundation is to provide massages for babies.
What?
Massages. It's right there on the website. We're going to massage little babies. That's pedophilia. Weird. And who supports that?
Pediatric massage professionals worldwide. You're right. This is bizarre.
It's bizarre. And so then, as we expose this, and I'm so happy that you're showing that website, Jason, that the Wall Street is named because of slaves who were lined up and sold.
Bishop.
Yeah.
Touch therapy.
Touch therapy. Adam Schiff is a board member.
Whoa.
The same Adam Schiff, who is trying to bring down the president of the United States, is a board member of Little Kids. Wow. So all the listeners, hey, go on Twitter and look up past Twitter postings from the president exposing this in codes. Adam Schiff is a pedophile. I'm calling it like it is. See, when we talk about the deep state financial and political eugenics, part 1, Adam Schiff, the left, what they're doing, Jason, they are normalizing pedophilia.
Wow.
They're normalizing pedophilia, okay? So this is a part of the deep state financial and political eugenics conspiracy. And can I say this too, Jason?
Sure.
That also, when we talk about financial and political eugenics, we have to also talk about the entertainment industrial complex and the clothing industry. Now, to a lot of African American kids, I want you guys to hear me right now. The origin of the baggy jeans, Jason, is originated, okay, from prisons going back to the 1970s, when homosexual or lesbian men and women used to create these jeans and to put them on of the person that they were buck breaking, and we're going to get into that in a few minutes, they wore that gene as a sign that they were buck broken. And we talk about Richard Mendenhall.
Yeah.
Now, it's interesting here that, and I cannot substantiate this, so I don't want anyone to run with it. So all of you need to do a deep research on the term Mendenhall and the Mendenhall families throughout the slave trade. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. So and all of us, and Jason, if you can, go to urbandictionary.com quickly. Urbandictionary.com. We're talking about the deep state financial and political eugenics part 1. We talked about the spiritual eugenics last week, medical eugenics, all right, Galton and Davenport, financial eugenics, Wall Street, political eugenics on the left. Mm-hmm. Now, we're going to talk about eugenics through the garment district, through the garment and entertainment complex. Type in the word sagging, capital SAGGIN. Okay. It's a term used back in the day when, and again, I'm not teaching black or white, but this is according to the Urban Dictionary. White people saw black people with their pants hanging. Okay. So they said his pants are sagging. Take the word sagging and spell that backwards, then you get the word NIGGAS. That is the deep state financial and political eugenics conspiracy. Let me go one step further. Also type in the word sagging, capital SAGGING. Okay. And then you spell that from right to left. Then you get the word G, then the word NIGGAS. Now, the term NIGGAS is a coded word in the hood or in Black America stating that a person has been buck broken. Let me say this. When you look here at the LGBTQ agenda, that is buck breaking. When you say, people says, well, you know what, I don't want to come out of the closet. But Jason, when that man or woman comes out of the closet, they're still in the closet, but the closet now is in the public eye. The Me Too movement, including these Gillette commercials, talking about the toxic masculinity of manhood, right, showing men leaving women and going to, that's buck breaking. So when we talk about this, Jason, and expose this, this is heavy. And can I say this also, Jason? I'm so happy to be on your show because you're helping me to go to the next level. Type in on urbandictionary.com the term bag overhead syndrome. Again, bag overhead syndrome. We're talking about the deep state financial and political eugenics part 1. Now, during slavery, okay, and Dr. Tony Browner brings this out in Hidden Colors 4, but it's also all throughout when we talk about Dr. Joseph Ben Yakadin and his history, his books on the history of African ecology. There was a term or a phrase that people are using today that is a cussing term called MF. Yeah. That term MF is originated in slavery going back 300 to 400 years when the slave masters would force the mother and the son to wear burlap sacks over their head and to have sex with each other in order to breed the next generation of field Negroes. So there is a term or a phrase in the Black community that is used. Well, the woman is ugly, just put a bag over her head and have sex with her, or vice versa. That came out of slavery. That's the origin or the origination of bag overhead syndrome. See, the Bible says, my people are destroyed for the lack of knowledge. This is the deep state financial and political eugenics. So then that's why people say the word MF, because that is exactly what happened going back 300 to 400 years. There's another term, and we're talking about, again, deep state financial and political eugenics, even through the American entertainment and clothing complex. Type in the term Mendenhalling on urbandictionary.com.
Yeah.
Mendenhalling, one word, a celebratory hump when your team wins a big game. In other words, when on the football field, the linebacker or the tight end does a great job, his teammates or his coach taps him on the behind. That's Mendenhalling, Jason. They have no idea what they're doing. We've been seeing this in within the sports industry for decades.
Really?
When the coach would tap the player on the behind, great job. That the origin of that is Mendenhalling. Okay.
Now, Bishop, we've got to stay on this for a moment because this has become somewhat of an issue here on Crowdsource the Truth. I never heard of this Mendenhalling before David Hawkins mentioned it to me. He had discovered the term from looking at the Urban Dictionary. And the thing that has happened since discovering this term is that we've seen a lot of videos. This is a video of Rashad Mendenhall. If people look in the lower left-hand corner, they can see the simulated humping there, where he is, mounting this guy Roethlisberger, and he pretends to hump him in what is an embarrassing sort of way. Now, the thing that's interesting is there's a lot of an unusually large number of reproductions of this scene by a lot of different sort of unknown YouTube accounts, just people with random names. This guy's got 2.5 thousand subscribers and 4.5 thousand views. Now, it's pretty unusual to have so many views on a video with a channel with so few subscribers. Of course, we could say, well, Rashad Mendenhall, he's well known. You include his name, a lot of people are going to look at it. But Bishop, as I go around and look at these different reproductions, people have clipped this segment out of the game and posted it up there. So many of them are posted on January 13th, 2011, which is, I guess, the date that, January 23rd, 2011, which is the date that this occurred. And it's also the date that the Urban Dictionary has posted that definition here. Let me get back to that. So that was posted on January 23rd, 2011, Mendenhalling. There's another post on the Urban Dictionary just for Mendenhall, which says that means to mount someone from behind while they're in a fetal position on the ground. After the deed is complete, you roll them over and see the humiliation in their eyes. And this is January 25th, 2011. So right around 2011 in January, there's a lot of activity trying to memorialize the meaning of this term Mendenhall. And Bishop, I'll tell you, there have been a number of social engineers who have dedicated a really inexplicable amount of time and resources focusing their attention on an allegation that David Hawkins made this term up. There is a mention of it in an article in 1979 in the Washington Post that we can get into in later shows, but this is something for us to continue to look at. Sorry to take so much time, but I think that's very interesting.
This is interesting. And, we talked about the rap music industry, and thank you so much, Jason, for bringing this up. If you could just type in Mendenhall rap singers, okay, on the website, thebash.com, Mendenhall rap singers, and the posting, the story no longer exists. That's interesting. So we talked about back in June, even in the rap industry, okay, if you can just type in best rap singers in Mendenhall, Mississippi, or
best rap singers
in Mendenhall, Mississippi, or MS. But when you come up to the site, it no longer exists. Okay, it says, sorry, it no longer exists. And you hit a nerve with me, Jason, again, about this Mendenhalling. Even in the NFL, the National Basketball Association, in Major League Baseball, and also Kevin Shipp, a guest that you've had many times, a great patriot, had put a posting up on Twitter a few days ago stating that the Central Intelligence Agency is asking its employees to wear rainbow bracelets in honor of the LGBT community. There is a system of buck breaking. We talked about Medea. We talked about Kevin Hart dressing like a woman. This is the reason why they're trying to destroy many black men and women who are going against that system. Dave Chappelle, they said he was crazy because he did not want to dress like a woman. And you know what I found out also, Jason? The origin of the term cowboy, all right? And you can type that on within the Urban Dictionary. The term cowboy or cowgirl goes back to buck breaking, because when a male slave was sodomized or a female slave was sodomized, after he or she was broken, they were responsible to tend the cows or the stock or the horses, because in the sick psychology of the slave master, that man or woman was called not just a cowboy and a cowgirl, but these people were broken and were programmed to control horses and cattle for the system of slavery and for the slave master, for the plantation. Sick minds. And can I say this, Jason, too, quickly? Not just the baggy jean, but to the women out there. Do you realize that the origin, the deep state financial and political eugenics, the origin of the boots going up to the knees, there's a fashion for that now. Do you realize, Jason, the origin of the boots going up to the knees, okay, goes back during the time of the slave trade. The horses were designed with this boot to warm, to warm the legs of the horses. And when the slave master wanted to have sex with the woman, who he called wench, W-E-N-C-H, and the word wench means a female pirate prostitute. Remember the term Port Royal, or the location Port Royal in Jamaican, and a lot of our Jamaican brothers and sisters knows what I'm talking about. But when the woman was raped by the slave master would take off the boot, okay, and put they called it the thong, not the bathing suit from the waist down, but the thong was used as a boot to warm the legs of the horses. And when the woman was raped, the slave master took the boot off of the horses and put them on the legs of the slave woman who was raped. This is where we get the term B-I-T-C-H. And I tell men, stop calling your wife or your girlfriend or your sister the B word, because it has its origin not just in a dog, not just in butt breaking, but in the raping of young women and mothers as that boot was transferred from the legs of the horses to the legs of the woman. Do you realize, and quickly here, I'm so happy that you brought up Mendenhall. And to young black people, listen, as we talk about the deep state financial and political eugenics, the word Negro is a part of the deep state financial and political eugenics. As we examine the term Negro, it comes from the Greek word necro, capital N-E-C-R-O, which means necropolis or necropsy, which means a necropsy is a surgical examination of a dead body, most commonly a dead animal. See, people are calling themselves Negro or the N-word, but the origin of that is, yes.
Doesn't it originate from the Latin word for black?
Yes, it does. Absolutely it does. But it also originates from the Greek Hellenistic word necro. You're right on that. But when we're not talking black as in pigmentation or a race. We're talking black in terms of a demonic psychosis. I'm so glad that you brought that up, Jason, because you're 100% right. So this term Negro, necrophiliac, or necropsy means the autopsy examination of a dead body. But you got black people calling themselves the N-word or Negro. Look up the word necrophiliac on the Urban Dictionary. It means someone who has intercourse with dead people.
Yeah.
Jason, this is the reason why black people are in the condition that they're in. I'm not trying to teach victimhood. All of this is exposed back to the Democratic Party. So a necrophiliac, necromancy, which is witchcraft, the satanic rite of having sex with a dead body, necromancy, necrophiliac, negro, in someone who has intercourse with a dead body. Jason, I was called back in 2009 to fly to Denver, Colorado, to deal with the situation with a bishop colleague of mine in the gospel. He's not a friend, just a colleague, and he is a well-known bishop. I'm not going to say his name and what part of the Pentecostal organization that he's from. Mm-hmm. But I was called to this a particular church, and the son of the bishop, back in 2009 in Denver, Colorado, was arrested. Get this, arrested by the local police department there in Denver because the one of the workers at this particular graveyard caught him digging up a casket, and the young man was having sex with a dead body. I kid you not, Jason. Having sex with a dead body. Necromancy, necrophiliac. Now, I found out quickly here, as we wrap this up, we're going to probably go 15 minutes over, to the African-American community, to Black America, when we examine the deep state financial and political eugenics, stop calling each other the N-word. Stop calling each other Negro, necromancy, necrophiliac. Because every time you do that, I'm talking to Black people, you are putting a curse upon yourself, your children, in the next generation. So this case in Denver, I found out, Jason, that the bishop, I'm not going to name his name, was had been molesting his son from the age of 3.
Oh, boy.
So now that gets into demonology, and that's another topic for another day. So when I'm saying that, you brought up Jay-Z, I brought up Beyonce, okay? Now there is, within the clothing industry, you have Black rappers wearing dresses, my friend, on the stage. There was a Black man that went to the Academy Awards last year wearing all Black and wearing a dress. There is a Pentecostal organization. This is the deep state financial, political, and eugenics here. The Church of God in Christ in Memphis, Tennessee. Down through the years, the past 5 years, they've had preachers coming to their annual conventions from the waist up wearing a black collar that all preachers or ministers do or priests do. But from the waist down, Jason, they're wearing a dress in high heels. Buck breaking. This is the deep state financial and political eugenics conspiracy. And so then, this is the reason why I have a passion, especially for young people. Stop calling each other that name. So as we go forth here, all of this, and again, I'm not teaching victimology or victimhood, sagging, right to left, G-N-I-G-G-A-S, or sagging, spell it from right to left backwards. That is the spirit of what's happening. And thank you for putting that up right now, Jason. Excellent.
Will Smith's son.
Yes. Buck breaking. Okay? And do you realize, Jason, as we go forth here into the deep state financial and political eugenics, there is a conspiracy out of Hollywood to bring about a plan to totally emasculate not just the black man, but American men, period. There are some states that if you say man within the workplace, you can get fired or fined. Even in Bible translations, there's a Bible translation that came out a few years ago, and its author, which I'm not going to say his name, you can all look it up, the Bible Passion Translation. It is bringing about an emasculation of the scriptures. Instead of calling God he, they call God it, or some passages she. They don't call men men and women women. They call those men and women it or they. So there is a conspiracy from the deep state to emasculate the present day church, to emasculate the present day financial system, to emasculate manhood, all right? Manhood, or the manhood of toxic manhood or toxic masculinity, those Gillette commercials. Jason, it is not by accident that they're normalizing pedophilia.
You know, and Bishop, I'd like to add this, that we all recognize that people of different cultures have different cultural traditions, and at the risk of sounding ignorant, in my personal experience, heterosexual black men that I've known, they object to even wearing like sandals and showing their feet because they feel it's effeminate. I'm so glad that you brought that. They are so, you go down in Jamaica where they had during slavery, Jason, what they call seasonal plantations, okay, where they were actually breeding black children. They used to have breeding festivals where other families of slave owners used to come to a plantation once a month and see black men being butt broken, Mendenhall. And the term bronco means to hump from behind. So then bronco, Mendenhall, buck breaking. So you have Tyler Perry allowing himself to be butt broken for what? For money. Kevin Bishop,
Hart.
Are you aware of this guy, Bronco Mendenhall?
Yes, exactly. You know what, Jason, and I'm very, I'm a perfectionist when it comes to research. I wouldn't doubt that this man, who was a coach at BYU or was a coach, is involved somehow. I'm not, and I'm very careful. I just don't throw accusations out there, okay, without facts. And I'm glad that you brought him up. Bronco Mendenhall, and all of your listeners, go back to their Urban Dictionary and type in Bronco. It's interconnected with Mendenhall or Mendenhalling. Bronco Clay Mendenhall. Most of the slave families during the 1700s, in the early part of the 1800s, before slavery was abolished through the 13th Amendment in 1865, those families that had the last name Mendenhall, and I cannot substantiate this, but there is probably there's a 90% chance that these families were doing this to the slaves. So generationally, people are being buck broken. Why? This is a part of this conspiracy of the deep state when it comes to financial and political eugenics. So we moved here, man, this is a powerful program today. So as we moved here, to all of our listeners, I'm sure you've heard of this deep state person by the name of Saul Alinsky.
Yeah.
That back in 1971, he wrote a book called Rules for Radicals. All
yes.
right. Now, he has an interesting background concerning the deep state financial and political eugenics, part one, as we're breaking this down. His parents, it is very interesting. His parents, his father's name was Benjamin Alinsky, and his mother's name was Sarah Tenenbaum. They immigrated from where? From Russia, right after the Bolshevik Revolution in 1917. So then Benjamin Alinsky and Sarah Tenenbaum Alinsky worked with Leon Trotsky, whose real name is Leon Bronstein. And to all of our listeners, Leon Trotsky, who worked with Lenin and Joseph Stalin, and of course Joseph Stalin excommunicated Trotsky. Trotsky came to New York City and lived in the Bronx for a period of almost 3 months. Where did he get the money to finance the Bolshevik Revolution? Well, when we look at a man by the name of Jacob Schiff, I don't know if he's related to the present-day Adam Schiff.
Wow.
But Jacob Schiff of Kuhn, Loeb and Company, according to his grandson, John, gave $20 million to the Bolshevik Revolution.
Wow.
And the answer is why? Now, as we examine here closely at the Priskers, the Julius Rosenwald. Now, it's interesting that there are some very powerful books that your listeners can get into, can even purchase. The book called The University and the City, From Medieval Origins to the Present, is edited by Thomas Bender. He says here, and it's interesting, that on page 215, that Julius Rosenwald, the Prisker Foundation, Marshall Field, does that sound familiar? Of the clothing line industry, Marshall Fields,
right.
And the Rockefellers, along with Laura Spelman, the wife of John D. Rockefeller, and to a lot of young black women who know the Spelman College in Atlanta, Georgia, that's named after Laura Spelman. According to Dr. Thomas Bender, these people gave millions of dollars to create the Prisker School of Medicine at the University of Chicago, including the Stepanovich Institute on the Formation of Knowledge and the Department of Genetic Medicine, paid with Rosenwald and Prisker and Rockefeller money. Including, there was an African-American Boule eugenicist who died on September 28, 2011, by the name of Dr. James E. Bowman, who was a pathologist and headed the Department of Pathology and Medicine at the University of Chicago up until his death in 2011, specializing in, and get this, Jason, genetics and African American studies. Again, these people, when you look also in the book called The Ruling Elite by Deanna Spingola, capital Spingola. On page 72, Dr. Spingola says that Julius Rosenwald gave millions of dollars to create an organization called ICOR, the Organization for Jewish Colonization in Russia. We're not talking about the 99%. We're just talking about the 1%. The Organization for Jewish Colonization in Russia. Why did he do that? And this is very fascinating, where it says that on page 6 and 72, that Woodrow Wilson said to Julius Rosenwald, thanking him for supporting what? The Russian Revolution, the Bolshevik Revolution. Jason, this is powerful. When you look in the book, Looking Backward, True Stories from Chicago's Past by Dr. Walter Roth. a powerful Jewish writer. He talks about also that the Rosenwalds, the Priskers, Marshall Fields, the Regensteins, the Rockefellers, Lord Spelman, and all of them were complicit in creating multiple departments of eugenics, going back to the early 1900s. So these are books that your listeners can get into and examine. So that I don't make up stuff just to be making it up. No, I don't do that. I back it up with proof. So these three books are very powerful. And not just these three books that I just made mention here, but definitely get into Wall Street and the Bolshevik Revolution, right, by Dr. Anthony C. Sutton. Very powerful book. And also he wrote, I believe, Wall Street and the Rise of Hitler. J.P. Morgan, the Bush family, whose real name is Sheriff, okay? All were complicit in supplying millions of dollars to create what? The Third Reich. When you get into America's Secret Establishment by Anthony C. Sutton, he gets into John D. Rockefeller supplying millions of dollars for the creation of the skulls and bones at Yale University. And mind you, Jason, as we go further, the I-Corps organization on page 72 of The Ruling Elite by Diana Spingola, the Organization for Jewish Colonization in Russia. I-Corps comes from the acronym Greek word I-Corps with an H. I-Corps, A-C-H-O-R, means the blood of the gods in Greek mythology. Why is that? Why did Rosenwald name an organization from the acronym in Greek mythology, I-Corps, including the letter H, meaning the blood of the gods? So the global elite who believe that their blood, Jason, is rooted going back to Genesis chapter 6, called the Nephilim blood. Now, that's another topic for another day. And it sounds like it's far, but it's true. And all of these elites, including Rosenwald, contributed millions of dollars to the University of Chicago. And there is a blood type. When we're talking about political, eugenics today, there is a blood type as we go deeper into the deep state financial and political eugenics called Rh positive or Rh negative.
Right.
That is a blood type that is rare on the planet. Most people in the Middle East, including the Basque people, capital B-A-S-Q-U-E, in southern Spain, has this blood type. In the global elite, okay, we're talking about not just the Rothschilds or, the Rockefellers, the Warburgs. All right, they all believe, including the Oppenheimers, that their blood it goes back to Genesis chapter 6 as the blood of the gods. This is eugenics, okay? This is powerful here. So then as we move further into this study, now remember last week I brought up a man by the name of Israel Cohen. Mm-hmm. Now, Israel Cohen was a Zionist, a part of the Fabian Society in London, England. If you go to rents.com, RENSE.com, or just type, "Is Plan for Racial Strife Another Hoax?" Is Plan for Racial Strife Another Hoax by Dr. Henry Makow, capital M-A-K-O-W. He quoted from what Israel Cohen said, okay? This is very powerful here. And I want to read this here because what everyone is missing in America today is the goal of the global elite. And this is what Israel Cohen said, June 7, 1957. "We must realize that our party's, the Communist Party, most powerful weapon is racial tensions. By propounding into the consciousness of the dark races that for centuries they have been oppressed by whites, we can mold them to the program of the Communist Party. In America, we will aim for subtle victory while inflaming the Negro, is that word, minority, against the whites. This is the plan of the deep state, Jason. We will endeavor to instill improminence in every walk of life, in the professions and in the world of sports and entertainment. With this prestige, the Negro will be able to intermarry with the whites and begin a process which we will deliver America to our cause. So then, and I am not against interracial marriage, so just let's throw that out. So in other words, people on the left will say, well, this is a hoax, including Willie Lynch is a hoax. This is the mindset of the left, okay? So as we move further into eugenics here, we talked about historical eugenics, the slave trade. We talked about spiritual eugenics. We talked about political eugenics. We talked about the eugenics of the clothing industry, the baggy jeans and the skirts, all rooted in the mindset or the psychosis of slavery. Now, I want to talk more about financial eugenics as we wrap this up. So we talked about the Bolshevik Revolution being funded by Jacob Schiff, all right, in 1917. Leon Trotsky was in the lower east side of Manhattan for 3 months in 1917. For what? To garner money for the Bolshevik Revolution in 1917. $20 million was given to Leon Trotsky, including Lenin and Stalin, for what? To overthrow the Tsar and to wipe out the lineage of the Tsars in order for a communist, fascist, socialist takeover of our country. And to Black people, listen, I want to say this to our African-American brothers and sisters as we wrap this up. Do you realize that the Soviet Union, through the KGB, created Black liberation theology? I got everyone's attention now. Black liberation theology is a communistical and socialist theology, Jason, that is based not on deliverance through the blood of the Lord Jesus Christ, but it is based on the psychosis of victimhood. James E. Cone out of Chicago traveled to South America and also traveled to the Soviet Union, going back to the late 50s, to learn about liberation theology. So Black liberation theology is not based on the Word of God. It is based in communism. Black liberation theology is a creation, note this, of the KGB. So all of these preachers, like Jeremiah Wright, okay, Otis Moss Jr., all of these African-American preachers who are teaching victimhood through Black liberation theology. And mind you, when we examine the logo or the insignia of the Black liberation theology, it is rooted in witchcraft. It is a doll in the form of what they're saying, Christ. But Jason, as we wrap this up, it's all rooted in victimhood. And next week, we're going to get deeper in part 2 of this deep state financial and political eugenics. So all of our listeners, listen, if you believe in this powerful presentation that you've heard for the past hour and 12 minutes, Global Spiritual Revolution needs your help. Please go to paypal.me/GSRR Media Group. Again, paypal.me/GSRR Media Group. Whether it is $20, $40, $80, $100, $1,000, Please sow right now. We need your financial help to continue this global movement through Global Spiritual Revolution Radio. Go to paypal.me/GSRR Media Group. One more time, paypal.me/GSRR Media Group. All right. And Jason, thank you so much for allowing me to speak to your people as we wrap this up concerning the deep state financial and political eugenics.
Bishop, it's my pleasure. I want to thank you for preparing such a comprehensive presentation. I mean, you're bringing out information that is opening a totally new avenue to viewers of Crowdsource the Truth. I appreciate your point of view and your insights. I want to point out one thing to you before we go. I had mentioned this earlier in the program, and I will do it the next time I'm down there, but just utilizing Google Earth, I've transported us virtually here to 500 Pearl Street, where the federal court building is. I didn't notice this, Bishop, but it appears to be a hexagon, the court building.
Really?
That's quite interesting. Can you see that there?
Yes. And can I say this real quick, Jason? I know you have another show coming up, and thank you so much for your patience. To our listeners, study the history or the origin of the Rothschild shield. The term Rothschild means wrought shield or red shield. It has a hexagram logo, which represents a six-pointed star, Masonically, or 666. So that logo is on the flag of Israel. That is not the Star of David. Masonically, that represents the global deep state Luciferian system that Rothschild put in, okay? And the 99.9% of the Jewish people are not falling for that. So the Rothschild or Rothschild logo or insignia is a six-pointed hexagram, which each point represents six. And do you realize, and we'll wrap this up here, Jason, that from the Capitol to the White House is 6 miles. From the White House to the Lincoln Memorial is 6 miles. And from the Lincoln Memorial to the Jefferson Monument, okay, is 6 miles. And back to the Capitol, 6,666.
Wow.
And George Washington commissioned the first African-American 33rd degree Black Mason by the name of Dr. Banneker. And I want everyone to look that up right now, okay? Benjamin Banneker. So Dr. Banneker was the man that was commissioned by George Washington, okay, Benjamin Banneker, to create schematically the city in the District of Columbia, of which we call Washington, D.C. It was an African-American man, Dr. Benjamin Banneker, who built schematically and masonically Washington, D.C. This is the deep state financial and political eugenics here.
Wow. And, you know, one of our viewers, Jennifer's watching on Periscope, reminds me about a previous episode we did where so many federal court buildings around the country are at 333 in Washington, D.C. It's Constitution Avenue. In Las Vegas, the federal court building is 333 Las Vegas Boulevard. And when we did that broadcast, many people, like more than half a dozen people, emailed me the addresses of federal court buildings around the country that are at 333 something. Now, Bishop, unfortunately, sorry,
yes,
yeah.
I know we got to. Yeah, I know you got to go, but to our listeners, go to familycouncil.org, familycouncil.org, or type in companies that support Planned Parenthood, companies that support Planned Parenthood. And it was Margaret Sanger in 1926 that went to Silver Lake, New Jersey to speak to the Women's Auxiliary of the KKK, okay? And she said, and someone sent me a message on Twitter stating that she said that we don't want it to get out to the Negroes, that we want to exterminate them. Okay, so expose these companies that directly or indirectly support Planned Parenthood. Companies that support Planned Parenthood familycouncil.org, and please go to paypal.me/GSRR Media Group. We need your help. Notice paypal.me/GSRR Media Group. Any amount, $20 on up, you can become a Global Revolution partner. Amen. And thank you so much, Jason. And we look forward to this on next Tuesday at 1 p.m.
Absolutely, Bishop. And I've been displaying the PayPal link for people to see. The last thing I want to leave you with, Bishop, my hope to show you this sigil outside the courthouse was dashed because Google Earth and Street View only show us this very blurry image. We can see actually, it looks like a family of tourists observing what I found to be a pretty shocking and bizarre thing imprinted on the street there inside this sort of star-looking sun type image. So I'll check it out the next time I'm down there, and we'll have some more to report to everyone. But there's a lot of really strange things about the way the courthouse and the neighborhood around it are laid out. There's this what do you call this? This monument, this the word is escaping me here, but it's right in front. These, like the Washington Monument, they always have these obelisks out in front of their buildings. So very
and it's not by accident. It's not by accident, because the deep state, they definitely want to bomb, pillage, plunder, destroy us. And remember Black Wall Street. And to those of our African American brothers and sisters, remember the district in Detroit, Michigan, Black Bottom, during the 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s. Black Bottom held many millionaire doctors and lawyers within the eastern part of the east side of Detroit, Michigan. And the federal government, Jason, built Highway I-75 straight through Black Bottom. Why? For why? Why? To destroy it purposely. And so research Black Bottom as well as Black Wall Street, where there was a surplus of planes left over from World War I that the National Guard of the state of Oklahoma and the police used these surplus planes that was left over from World War I to drop turpentine bombs. They dropped turpentine bombs, and they also, on the ground, had machine guns to wipe out the citizens who were Black conservatives in Greenwood, Oklahoma, Wall Street. And this is the deep state financial and political eugenics. And thank you so much, Jason. And we're looking forward to part 2 next Tuesday at 1 p.m.
Absolutely, Bishop. Everyone will look forward to seeing you then, and thanks for joining me today. Stay tuned, everybody. At 3 p.m., we're going to be back with Larry Nichols. Thanks so much to the Bishop. Larry Gaiters, we'll see you next week, Bishop. Have a great Thanksgiving.
You too, sir, and don't eat too much.
I don't know if I'm going to be able to do that, but thanks for the advice, Bishop. We'll see everybody next Tuesday with Bishop Gaiters. Thanks so much for watching.